This podcast explores graphic and disturbing stories and includes strong language. It therefore may not be suitable for our young listeners or other folks who may find it disturbing.
Untold Cold Cases starts now.
Hello and welcome to Untold Cold Cases podcast, where we're going to cover different cases that do not get much or any attention. I am your host, Susan Gonzalez. Today I will be discussing a case that has been very important to me for over 13 years. The case is the unsolved murder of Sally Ann Hutton in Iola, Kansas. Today, October 3rd, 2022, marks the 53rd anniversary of her death. On October 2nd, 1969, students were enjoying an Iola junior high football game, and nobody could foresee the horror that was about to befall on one of their own. Nobody expects tragedy to happen in a small town, and not twice within 1 week. This week started off with tragedy and would end with more tragedy than anyone in town could have imagined. A couple of days before, on September 30th, 1969, Betty Cantrell returned to work around 2 a.m. She was opening the diner, getting ready for the morning to start. The last time Cantrell was seen alive was at 4:30 a.m. at the Dine Out Cafe when a police officer drove by the diner. Nobody else was scheduled to report to work until 5 a.m. At 5 a.m., co-workers found the lights in the diner shut off and Cantrell's car missing. Her car was found later that morning at the south end of First Street near the creek. There was no sign of Miss Cantrell, so the search for her continued. On October 2nd, 1969, while police were still searching for Miss Cantrell, Sally Ann Hutton, a 14-year-old girl, was like any normal teenager who loved to hang out with friends and support her school football team. Iola was playing Fort Scott that night. A friend recalls seeing Sally at the football game that night, but there was no talk of what was going on after the game. Sally was not hanging out with anyone in particular that night. Her friend was not able to recall anything strange or out of the ordinary. After the game was over, sometime between 8 and 9 p.m., two witnesses saw Sally leaving the football game with a young man in his car. The witnesses were not able to give the name of the man, but they were able to provide a vague description of him and the vehicle he was driving. The young man was tall, had red hair, and drove a metallic blue Chevy. The two individuals saw the car drive away, not knowing that it would be the last time they would see Sally alive. There is a lot of speculation about what went on after Sally left the football game, but nobody really knows for sure. The only thing certain was that Sally did not return home the next morning, and that is when her family began to worry. They contacted all of her friends, but nobody seen her since the football game. Her parents reported her missing 2 hours before her body was found. On Friday, October 3rd, 1969, around noon, the body of Sally Ann Hutton was found in a ditch a mile north of the Allen County Country Club. The body was 100 yards east at the intersection of 2000th Street and North Dakota Road on an old dirt road reputed to be Lover's Lane. There was no attempt to hide her body, which was visible to any passerby. Sally was severely beaten in the face and head with a tire iron or similar object. She was beaten so badly that her facial features were not distinguishable. She also had a broken leg and injury to her back that looked like tire tracks. The police believed that a car may have ran over Sally. However, something was not right about where Sally's body had been found. There was very little blood at the site. Sally may have been murdered in another location and then thrown into the ditch. The initial autopsy by George Dittar, the county coroner, confirmed Sally had been dead between 10 and 15 hours before she was found, putting her murder around midnight. Also, the autopsy confirmed that Sally had a significant amount of blood loss, so the coroner confirmed that Sally had been murdered somewhere else and then dumped into the ditch. The amount of blood lost during the murder was not consistent with the amount of blood in the ditch. The autopsy showed that Sally's death was a result of severe blows to her face and head. It also showed additional injuries that may have been caused from being ran over by the car. There were also blood-stained cleansing tissues, which were found on the county road, and the police assumed that they were thrown from the car. On the evening of October 3rd, 1969, around 5 p.m., the body of Betty Cantrell was found. Joe Maloney, who lived on the south end of Kentucky Street Bridge, saw the body floating in Elm Creek and called police. Cantrell, a 28-year-old mother of two, had been beaten in the back of the head. The police believe that she was beaten by a rock that was discovered by the creek covered in blood. The autopsy of Cantrell concluded that she was killed by being drowned in Elm Creek. The KBI found no connection between the Cantrell and Hutton murders, even though they occurred days apart, and it would make one wonder. However, a drunken confession in the Cantrell case appears to put such speculation to rest. Sally had an initial autopsy, but the Kansas Bureau of Investigation felt they needed further examination, and her body was exhumed in the beginning of November 1969. Her body was then taken to Wichita for examination by a pathologist. On November 6, 1969, Dr. Robert Kelly, MD, with the Wichita Clinical Laboratories, conducted an additional autopsy. The autopsy showed that Sally had not been sexually assaulted, as the autopsy showed that she had not had sexual intercourse. However, police still believe that the crime was sexually motivated. It was also discovered that Sally had eaten a hamburger and french fries before she was killed. That information could have been very valuable at the beginning of the investigation, as there was not many fast food restaurants in Iola at the time. Sally Ann Hutton's unsolved murder still haunts those who knew Sally or who have heard about her murder. People will always wonder what happened that fateful night and who committed the murder. People will continue to thumb through old newspapers and yearbooks trying to find pieces to this unsolved murder that has left everyone puzzled. Some people may sit back and look at old yearbooks wondering if the person who murdered Sally is staring right back at them. There has been a lot of speculation about the murder of Sally Ann Hutton. Everyone may have their own theory of who committed the murder. Could it have been an individual whose family was wealthy? Maybe one of the town bad boys? Or someone close to Sally? Why would someone want to murder Sally? Did Sally hang out with the wrong crowd? Was she a little promiscuous and things got out of control? Or was it a stranger who ran into Sally late that night? Those questions run through the minds of those who have heard about Sally's murder and the stories that have been spread around town over the years. Without answers, all people have is speculation and stories that have spread. One day we will know the truth. It has been 53 years since Sally Ann Hutton was murdered, but the investigation is still ongoing. Sally's family wants justice, and no matter how long it takes, they will continue to search for the truth. Someone out there knows what happened that fateful night. There have been only a couple updates given throughout the years. On July 2nd, 2010, Sally's sister, Carolyn Henry, received a call from KBI telling her that Sally's file had been pulled as a priority case. Detective Brad Quartz promised to keep her informed of anything pertaining to the case. Sally's sister didn't hear anything again until October 26, 2013, when KBI agents went to Iola to review Sally's murder once again. They may have possibly been examining some of the evidence for DNA, but there was no update given after that. In 2018, the KBI reviewed the case when they received a request from Sally's sister, Carolyn Henry. And then in July 2022, after receiving an update request from myself, the KBI replied to me stating that they reviewed the paper file and determined that there were over 200 reports in the file. The KBI had conducted more than 120 interviews and administered 17 polygraphs. The KBI did verify the autopsy performed on November 6, 1969 by Dr. Robert Kelly, MD, with Wichita Clinical Laboratories, but they have no idea where the records are now kept for that office. There have been no new leads into Sally's murder, which would cause the FBI to follow up on the investigation. If any new leads do become available, the KBI will investigate them. If you have any information that may shed light on the case and help bring justice for Sally and her family, please call the Kansas Bureau of Investigation at 785-296-8200. Please, everyone, go out and share Sally's story. I know the podcast is short, but this is all the information I have. Come on, all you crime sleuths. We can go out and find information and research this case to learn more. Maybe all of us working together can get the KBI to reopen the investigation and review the case file in depth. Maybe we can get them to actually look for DNA. If all of us work together, we can bring Sally's case to the forefront, 53 years later. If you would like to send me a message about this case or another case you would like to discuss, send me an email at untoldcoldcases@gmail.com. You can also follow our pages, Untold Cold Cases, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed today's podcast.